Who is Michelle Mimi Theriot on OutDaughtered? Get to know Danielle Busby's feisty mom. You didn't think Adam and Danielle Busby are raising 6 little girls without any support, did you? As you can imagine, the stars of OutDaughtered rely quite a bit on the family when it comes to raising their daughters, including Danielle's mom, Michelle Theriot, aka Mimi. Who is Mimi on OutDaughtered? Mimi proved to be a dedicated grandma when she left her native Louisiana to be closer to the couple and their girls in Houston, Texas, shortly after the Quints were born. Though Mimi originally lived with her daughter, son-in-law, and 6 granddaughters, she eventually moved into a home of her own. As fans of the TLC show know, the move wasn't exactly easy for Mimi, as she was reluctant to settle into her home in Texas. In fact, it took her so long to unpack her belongings that Danielle and her twin sisters, Ashley Mowbray and Crystal Mills, decided to unpack for her. They also threw their mama a surprise party to make the transition easier. What happened to Mimi's home on OutDaughtered? Unfortunately, Mimi's home was flooded with over a foot of water when Hurricane Harvey tore through southeast Texas in 2017. Luckily, Danielle and her family were there to help. "We have thrown out Mimi's entire house today. It's devastating," Adam and Danielle wrote on Facebook at the time. "Though stuff is just stuff and can always be replaced, it's not easy tossing your belongings. One thing is for sure, we all stick together and we'll make it through." Later, Danielle shared an update on how her mother was doing in a blog post. "My mom, Mimi, as well as tons of other close friends of ours have lost everything. We were not able to get into Mimi's house for about 4 days after the storm due to the high water. We had to throw away pretty much everything. It has been very emotional having to throw away family heirlooms, photos from when we were all kids just all around our memories." Adam explained how the family tried to keep themselves and the kids safe throughout the storm. "We've been kind of hunkered down for the past few days," the father of 6 told fans, explaining that the family had been tuning into the news reports to get regular updates on the flooding. "That's pretty much all we've been doing and trying to get out of the house in between rain bands." Is Mimi still on OutDaughtered? Since entering the spotlight, Danielle has been open about how close she is to her mother and sisters and how she loves being able to raise her gaggle of girls alongside them. "Would I have done the show without my mother and sisters? Well, it's made it more exciting with them," the mom to Blake, Hazel, Riley, Parker, Ava, and Olivia told Channel Guide magazine in 2016. "I love being able to capture moments with them. And I see them all the time, especially my sister, who lives here close to me, so it would have been weird not having them involved, because we're always together." Fans have watched Mimi help Danielle raise her girls for much of the show, but the grandmother seemingly fell out of the picture during season 9 in 2023. In October 2020, Mimi was pulled over in League City, Texas, after police saw her swerving on the road and straddling the shoulder, TMZ reported at the time. When authorities made contact with the reality star, she was reportedly lethargic and had slurred speech and bloodshot eyes. She reportedly told police that she had 2 glasses of wine but later changed her story to no wine but 2 Michelob Ultra beers. Mimi reportedly bombed her field sobriety tests and was swaying when she got out of her vehicle. She was arrested for a DUI and taken to a local jail. In April 2021, Mimi entered a diversion program in which she had to be under community supervision for 1 year, TMZ reported. She was prohibited from consuming alcohol and other controlled substances and was not allowed to enter any bars. Mimi also had to complete 24 hours of community service and a DWI education program. Finally, she needed to submit to random drug testing and not break any other laws. For fans of TLC's long-running reality show OutDaughtered, one name that quickly became familiar and beloved was Michelle Mimi Theriot. She wasn't one of the stars in the sense of being on every screen or having storylines devoted solely to her. But she was the kind of person who brings texture and humanity to a family story, the grandmother, mother, friend, shoulder to lean on, and occasional source of comic relief. For years, Mimi anchored the Busby household in ways both big and small, emerging as one of the most talked-about figures in the show's extended cast. Born Michelle Maria Theriot on December 3, 1963, Mimi came to the world well before the age of social media and reality television, and yet in later life, she became known far and wide because of the family she loved and supported. She was raised in Louisiana and became the mother of 3 daughters, Crystal, Ashley, and Danielle, living a life rooted in family long before any cameras ever showed up. Danielle, of course, would go on to marry Adam Busby and become the mother of 6 daughters, 5 of them quintuplets, and that's where Mimi's role really blossomed into something that millions of people would witness on television. When Danielle and Adam's lives changed forever with the birth of their quintuplets Ava, Olivia, Hazel, Riley, and Parker, Mimi didn't sit back and watch from afar. Instead, she packed up and moved from her home in Louisiana to Houston, Texas, so she could be close and helpful. In large families, every set of hands matters, and for the Busbys, Mimi's presence became woven into the very fabric of their daily routine. This wasn't just a grandmother who watched the girls once in a while. She was there for the hands-on moments, helping with feeding, comforting, singing lullabies, and stepping in whenever extra support was needed in a home that could be overwhelming even on a calm day. Many fans first noticed Mimi because of her personality. She didn't blend into the background. On camera, she was warm, outspoken, and quick with both encouragement and honest opinion, a grandmother who was real and raw, unafraid to laugh, to cry, or to share her thoughts and feelings. Her voice became part of the rhythm of the show, a reminder that while reality TV can revolve around bright lights and dramatic moments, it's the real-life connections that leave lasting impressions on viewers. Family through storms, literal and figurative. Mimi's life with the Busbys wasn't just about cameras and cute moments. Reality seeped in, not always gently or politely, at unexpected moments. In 2017, Hurricane Harvey tore through southeast Texas and caused catastrophic flooding in many areas, including where Mimi lived. The storm was a stark reminder that life doesn't pause for television, for schedules, or for families trying to hold their world together. Mimi lost her home and much of her property, and along with that came heartbreak and the loss of personal memories stored in photos and heirlooms. She wasn't alone. Of course, the Busby family rallied around her, but it was nonetheless a traumatic chapter, one that brought out both the fragility and resilience of the human spirit. Watching that chapter unfold over captions, social media updates, and in bits on the show, viewers saw an older woman who was shaken, but not defeated, by loss. Her vulnerability wasn't hidden. It was shown honestly, without artificial glamour or pretension. In that honesty, she connected with people who had also lived through displacement, loss, or simply the grief of losing things that had sentimental value. Despite her strong presence earlier in the series, in the later seasons of OutDaughtered, particularly in seasons 9 and 10, Mimi's face wasn't as common. Fans asked, "Where's Mimi? Why don't we see her anymore?" And for a while there wasn't an official statement from the Busby family or from TLC explaining her absence. Instead, fans pieced together bits of information. Some remembered her involvement, others asked about her on social media, and some uncovered news reports that suggested Mimi had faced struggles outside of the spotlight. In October 2020, Mimi was arrested for driving under the influence in League City, Texas, an event that brought headlines and scrutiny. Police reported that her vehicle was swerving on the road and that officers observed signs consistent with impairment. As is often the case with public figures, this moment, private, personal, and legally serious, became a public talking point. The charges ultimately led Mimi into a diversion program that required community supervision, adherence to certain restrictions, and compliance with legal requirements designed to avoid further penalties. This isn't a story about judgment. It's a human moment that reminded audiences that people who appear in reality television are not when the cameras stop rolling. Challenges happen. Mistakes happen. And the path from misstep to recovery isn't always straightforward or easy. In the wake of these events, social media accounts associated with Mimi became more private or less active, and she was absent from camera shoots. Some fans interpreted this as a sign of distance between Mimi and the show, or even between Mimi and her family. Others speculated about her personal choices, her health, and her future. What remains clear, however, is that Mimi's life, like everyone else's, has layers and depth that no single storyline could ever capture. Before her appearance on television, Mimi had already lived decades of life years of being a daughter, a mother, a friend, and a grandmother. After her time on the show, she continued to evolve. At one point, she transitioned into work as a real estate agent, earning her real estate license and assisting families in buying and selling homes. Whether or not viewers saw her in that role on television, she carried on her professional life outside of cameras and edited episodes. Across these phases, what's striking is how Mimi's identity wasn't shaped by the show, but rather, the show introduced her authentic self to the world. She wasn't a cast member defined only by her relationship to others. She was a grandmother with pride, a woman who had lived, learned, adapted, and endured, and who brought all of that into the home she entered in Texas. Legacy, beyond reality TV. Like many figures who move in and out of public attention, Mimi leaves a legacy that is more complex than any headline or clip could fully capture. For some fans, she was the warm, hilarious grandmother who helped raise sextuplets and made an already chaotic life feel lighter. For others, she represented someone who showed strength in vulnerability, resilience in the face of loss, and the courage to continue living even when the world watched. And for many, she was simply someone familiar part of their routine for years as they tuned in to see how a family managed what seemed to be the impossible, raising 6 daughters while staying grounded, connected, and human. In the end, Michelle "Mimi" Theriot is more than a reality TV personality. She is a person with a full life story with triumphs, setbacks, relationships both joyful and complicated, and memories that exist both on camera and off. Her chapter on OutDaughtered might have slowed, but the imprint she left on fans and on the Busby family story endures. That imprint isn't just about television or spectacle. It's about family, perseverance, love, and the unfiltered, unpredictable journey of being human. OutDaughtered fans wasn't just that she was comedic, outspoken, or a grandmother in a hectic family. It was that she represented something deeply human, the person behind the roles we assign to others. Reality TV, by its nature, can sometimes reduce people to labels: grandma, mom, the funny one, the dramatic one. Mimi transcended those simple tags, because even in laughter, frustration, or frustration turned laughter, viewers saw emotional depth. Think about the candid exchanges between Mimi and Danielle, not staged, but real moments where one woman, tired after hours of caring for babies, leaned on another woman who herself had raised children decades earlier. Their interactions weren't manufactured for laughs. They were human, in all the imperfect, honest ways life often is. Mimi wasn't always the grandmother we saw on TV. For decades, she lived a life rich with experience, routine, challenges, and ordinary moments that never made camera time. She worked. She parented. She faced life's unpredictable shifts, joys, and hardships alike. After she moved to help her daughter with the Quintuplets, she didn't just arrive with advice and commentary. She came with years of lived experience, knowledge about managing households, raising kids, balancing emotions, and persevering through everyday problems many families know well. In many episodes of OutDaughtered, Mimi's presence wasn't just background support, it was a reminder that family life doesn't happen in isolated moments. It happens in a sequence of tiny interactions that build into shape and meaning over time. A shared cup of coffee before the chaos begins. A soft word to a crying infant. A check-in with a daughter who's exhausted but determined. A light-hearted joke after a long, difficult day. These weren't camera-worthy for drama, but they were life-worthy for connection. And in how Mimi carried herself, in her willingness to show both strength and vulnerability, she reminded viewers that family love isn't loud all the time. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it's steady. And sometimes it's simply being physically present when the world feels overwhelming. Hurricane Harvey, the devastating storm that hit Texas in 2017, was one of those moments in Mimi's life that blurred the lines between reality TV and real reality. For OutDaughtered audiences, the Busby family's focus was almost always on the 5 girls, their sleep schedules, feeding routines, developmental milestones, with Mimi on the periphery in all the best ways. But when Harvey hit, the focus inevitably shifted. Floodwaters don't care about camera crews. Destroyed personal property doesn't pause for editing schedules. Heartbreak doesn't check whether it's convenient for production calendars. Mimi lost her home. She lost belongings that couldn't be replaced. She lost snapshots in time that weren't stored digitally, memories that no backup drive could revive. In that moment, she wasn't a television personality. She was a grandmother, a neighbor, a community member, someone whose life was upended in ways that left emotional and practical scars. And yet, and this is important, her response wasn't defined solely by loss. What resonated for many was her persistence. She didn't disappear into silence. She didn't pretend nothing happened. She continued living, continuing, rebuilding, not because the cameras needed a story, but because life itself demanded continuation. Reality TV often brings attention to people who otherwise might have stayed private their entire lives. And with that attention comes scrutiny. In 2020, Mimi faced legal trouble, a DUI arrest that brought headlines and public commentary. For those who follow celebrities or reality stars, such news often becomes fodder for gossip, hot takes, judgments, exaggerated assumptions. But at its core, this moment was not a plot twist or a manufactured drama arc. It was an adult human being dealing with a consequence. When you look at that moment through the lens of compassion and complexity, you see something important. People are not their mistakes. Mimi didn't become her DUI. She experienced it. She lived through the subsequent legal requirements, personal consequences, and the introspection that naturally follows any setback. In many ways, this moment showed viewers perhaps more deeply than any episode that life doesn't pause when public awareness increases. Problems don't evaporate when cameras are rolling. Responsibility is lived, not staged. Mimi was funny on OutDaughtered. That was obvious. Her one-liners, her expressive reactions, her bold voice, all of these made for memorable television. But beneath that outward humor was a woman with emotional depth, someone who knew how to give comfort, how to catch someone's eye and raise it with a smile, how to speak truth gently and firmly when it mattered. Humor was her tool, not her shield. It wasn't a way to escape emotion, but a way to acknowledge it. That's why so many viewers connected with her. They saw themselves or someone they knew in her banter, her observations, her genuine reactions to life's unpredictable moments. Family life, by definition, combines deep belonging with occasional conflict. That's a universal truth. Even the closest loved ones disagree. They misunderstand each other. They get frustrated. But what often goes unseen on reality television, and what's more powerful, is how those disagreements resolve. How apologies are given. How love persists after a hard moment. How, even in differences, people choose connection over division. Mimi and Danielle were a great example of this. They didn't always see eye to eye. They didn't always agree. But they loved. And that love and its persistence, in its resilience, is what real family life looks like outside the camera frame. When people ask what made Mimi special, the answer isn't simple entertainment value. It's something more subtle: relatability. She wasn't a caricature. She wasn't a comedic sidekick or a manufactured personality. She was a fully human presence who existed in the messy, beautiful reality of family life. And that's why so many fans remember her not as a fleeting TV figure, but as someone who felt familiar, someone like their own grandma, their mom, their aunt, their neighbor. Mimi didn't leave OutDaughtered because she stopped being relevant. She left or stepped back because life continued on its own terms, beyond what the show could ever capture. Cameras can record moments. They cannot capture the totality of a person's inner life, their history, their relationships, or their inner reflections. What Mimi leaves behind in fans' memories isn't a TV highlight reel. It's a mosaic of laughter, humility, resilience, warmth, opinions voiced in good faith, and love lived in the everyday.